Brazil has places so beautiful they look designed for postcards. Tropical beaches, green islands, mangroves glittering in the heat, military coastlines, reefs lost in the Atlantic, and forests close enough to a city that you can almost believe they belong to everyone. But some of the most fascinating places in Brazil don't appear in travel guides for one brutally simple reason. You are not allowed to just arrive and enter. This countdown follows 13 real places where beauty, isolation, science, national security, biodiversity, or human survival keep the gate closed. And this is not an invitation to trespass. In Brazil, categories such as biological reserves and ecological stations exist precisely because some landscapes cannot survive ordinary tourism. Public visitation is prohibited as a rule, except in specific educational or scientific situations, and research depends on prior authorization. So subscribe if you like discovering the side of a country that exists behind fences, tides, patrols, permits, and silence. Because Brazil is not only the country you can visit, it is also the country that quietly tells you, you may look, but you may not enter. Number 13. Restinga da Marambaia, Rio de Janeiro. From a distance, Restinga da Marambaia looks like an impossible coastal gift. A long, pale strip of sand stretched between the Atlantic Ocean and Sepetiba Bay, with beaches that appear too clean, too empty, too cinematic to belong to the same metropolitan region as Rio de Janeiro. It is the kind of place a tourist would imagine as the next secret paradise, the beach that somehow escaped umbrellas, vendors, loudspeakers, and resort brochures. But Marambaia is not a casual beach escape. It is tied to Brazil's armed forces, especially military training and operations. The Brazilian Navy identifies a training center on Marambaia, and Navy reports have described live fire exercises, missile activity, and shooting campaigns in the area. That is the first lesson of this list. Not every empty beach is waiting for tourists. Some are empty because the people who control the territory have very practical reasons for keeping them that way. A perfect shoreline becomes a military landscape. The sound you imagine as waves may, on certain days, be mixed with helicopters, ammunition, and restricted navigation. For the ordinary visitor, Marambaia is the classic Brazilian contradiction. It looks like leisure, but functions as strategy. The sand is real, the sea is real, the beauty is real, and so is the warning. Paradise here wears a uniform. Number 12. Guanabara Ecological Station, Rio de Janeiro. Guanabara Bay is one of the most photographed waters in Brazil. The world knows it through Sugarloaf Mountain, the Rio-Niterói Bridge, sailboats, postcards, airport approaches, and the shimmering skyline of Rio. But inside that same bay system, there is another Guanabara. Lower, muddier, quieter, and almost invisible to tourism. The Guanabara Ecological Station protects mangrove ecosystems in the coastal marine environment of the Atlantic forest. Its management documents describe mangroves covering the unit and performing essential ecological functions: shelter, reproduction, feeding grounds, and protection of the coastline. It is not the Guanabara of selfies. It is the Guanabara of roots in black mud, crabs disappearing under leaves, herons standing still like old priests, and channels that breathe with the tide. The irony is sharp. One of Brazil's most famous bays hides one of its least tourist-friendly protected spaces. And the restriction is not theatrical. Guanabara's ecological station is a protection area, not a playground. Rules for the unit state that it is not open to recreational visitation, with educational or scientific visits handled under authorization. You can admire the bay from a viewpoint, a boat, or an airplane. But the mangrove itself belongs to another logic. It is not there to entertain you. It is there to keep a wounded ecosystem breathing. Number 11. Tinguá Biological Reserve, Rio de Janeiro. Now imagine a forbidden forest at the edge of a metropolis, not in the Amazon, not weeks away by river, but in Rio de Janeiro state, close enough to urban life that the contrast becomes almost uncomfortable. Tinguá Biological Reserve protects more than 24,800 hectares of Atlantic forest, including dense montane and submontane formations, and was created in 1989. On paper, those numbers sound administrative. On the ground, they mean a wall of green, wet leaves, steep slopes, insects humming in the shade, water running in hidden channels, and a forest that has survived beside one of Brazil's most populated regions. The reason you cannot treat it like a weekend trail is simple. It is a biological reserve. That category is designed for full preservation of biota and natural attributes, with public visitation prohibited except for regulated educational purposes, and scientific research requiring prior authorization. Tinguá looks tempting precisely because it is close. It whispers the lie. Every restricted place whispers, "Come on, it is just there." But that closeness is the danger. The forest is not protected from distance. It is protected from pressure, from shortcuts, from illegal extraction, from the old human belief that every beautiful thing must become accessible. Tinguá is not a park that forgot to open its gates. It is a reserve that remembers exactly why they are closed. Number 10. Tamoios Ecological Station, Angra dos Reis and Paraty, Rio de Janeiro. Angra dos Reis and Paraty are places people associate with luxury boats, colonial streets, green water, private decks, and islands that seem to float in sunlight. So it feels almost absurd that in the middle of this famous tourist region, there are islands where ordinary landing is not part of the deal. Tamoios Ecological Station is a federal protected area in the marine coastal biome, created in 1990, covering more than 8,100 hectares. It lies in the region of Angra dos Reis and Paraty, and ECM Bio describes it as an essentially marine unit that includes island and marine environments. The landscape is seductive: rocky shores, Atlantic forest remnants on islands, blue-green water, and the type of sheltered bay that makes boat owners feel they have discovered civilization's perfect loophole. But the ecological station category changes the rules. The islands are not simply scenic stops. They are part of a scientific and conservation structure. The tension here is elegant and annoying. A boat full of tourists may pass through one of Brazil's most desirable coastal corridors, while nearby an island says nothing, offers no bar, no pier for selfies, no beach club, no permission. It is there, visible, but legally distant. Tamoios proves that restriction does not always look like barbed wire. Sometimes it looks like a perfect island under the sun, surrounded by boats that are allowed to admire it, and not much more. Number 9. Tupiniquins Ecological Station, São Paulo. On the coast of São Paulo, many people imagine crowded beaches, apartment towers, weekend traffic, and the eternal drama of escaping the city on a Friday afternoon. But offshore, scattered beyond the ordinary beach route, there are protected marine spaces that most travelers will never understand, let alone step on. Tupiniquins Ecological Station is a marine coastal federal unit created in 1986 with an area listed by ICM Bio at about 1,727 hectares. It is not a single famous island that everyone recognizes. Its power is more discreet, a set of islands and marine areas folded into a legal category that prioritizes preservation and research. This is the kind of place people may see on maps and underestimate. Small islands do not always announce their importance. They do not need mountains, hotels, or dramatic ruins. Sometimes their value is ecological: nesting birds, rocky shores, underwater life, and marine habitats that become laboratories precisely because the public does not trample through them. For the viewer, the practical implication is blunt. This is not a normal tourist archipelago. Being on the coast, near cities, near marinas, near fishing communities, does not make it available. Proximity is not permission. Tupanicans is one of those Brazilian places where the map appears open, the ocean appears free, and the law quietly says, no. The island may be small, but the restriction is not. Number 8. Restricted areas of Tupinambás Ecological Station and the Alcatrazes Archipelago, São Paulo. Alcatrazes is where the story gets more complicated and more interesting. Because here, Brazil shows a subtle kind of restriction. A place can partly open and still remain partly forbidden. The Alcatrazes Archipelago, off the coast of São Paulo, has a history shaped by military use, environmental campaigns, scientific interest, and conservation disputes. ICMBio's public use planning notes that military training restricted navigation in the region from 1998 to 2008, and that access restrictions continued until 2016, when the wildlife refuge of the Alcatrazes Archipelago was created. It also states that while ordered visitation is allowed in the refuge, areas of the Tupinambás Ecological Station remain restricted for visitation, functioning as control areas for research and monitoring impacts. That distinction matters. A tourist hears Alcatrazes is open and imagines total access. But nature rarely fits the tourist imagination, and protected area law fits it even less. Part of the archipelago can receive divers and monitored boats. Other parts remain off limits. Visually, it is spectacular. Rock walls, seabirds, blue water, fish moving like sparks below the surface. But the most revealing part is invisible. The archipelago is not just being visited, it is being measured, compared, monitored, tested against the very pressure that admiration creates. So yes, you may get near Alcatrazes under the right rules, but do not mistake a controlled door for an open house. Some islands are there to show you beauty. Others are there to show scientists what beauty looks like when people stay away. And if this is the sort of Brazil you like, the one that refuses to become a brochure, subscribe now, before the next place reminds you that even paradise can file paperwork against you. Number 7. Arvoredo Marine Biological Reserve, Santa Catarina. In Santa Catarina, the sea around Arvoredo has the blue-green glamour that divers love. Sunlight cuts through the water, fish gather over rocky bottoms, and the name itself circulates among people who dream of underwater Brazil. But Arvoredo is not as simple as, go diving and enjoy. The Arvoredo Marine Biological Reserve was created in 1990 and covers 17,600 hectares, about 98% of it marine. ICMBio has reported more than 1,400 species identified in the reserve, including marine and terrestrial species, and notes that while the southern part of Arvoredo Island is open for recreational diving, because it is outside the reserve, visitation in the rest of the reserve is prohibited, with no landing allowed in the terrestrial areas except emergencies. That is the kind of nuance tourists often hate and conservation depends on. Nearby is not the same as inside. Diving around is not the same as entering the reserve. A few meters, a boundary line, a rule on a map. These can separate legal recreation from environmental violation. Arvoredo's beauty is not soft. It is guarded by reefs, archaeological traces, bird reproduction sites, and the quiet arithmetic of marine life. Fish nurseries do not need applause. Nesting birds do not care about your vacation schedule. This place teaches a cold lesson. The ocean may look continuous, but legally and ecologically, it is full of borders. And some of them are there because life underwater has no voice except the rule that keeps you out. Number 6. Tiamã Ecological Station, Mato Grosso. The Pantanal most travelers imagine is open, cinematic, and full of wildlife. Jaguars on riverbanks, capybaras in the sun, caimans stacked like prehistoric luggage, birds exploding into the sky at sunset. But Thaya Ma is a different Pantanal, less touristic, more guarded, and much harder to reduce to a safari fantasy. Thaya Ma Ecological Station lies in Mato Grosso in the Pantanal biome. ICMBio lists its current approximate area at 68,502 hectares after a 2026 expansion decree, with the original creation dating to 1981. Recent ICMBio material describes Thaya Ma as protecting a mosaic of Pantanal environments: floodable areas, rivers, lagoons, channels, savannas, seasonal forests, and aquatic vegetation such as water hyacinths and giant water lilies. This is not the Pantanal with hotel decks and scheduled boat rides. This is a flood pulse landscape, a shifting world where land and water negotiate every season. One month, a path may exist. Another month, it may be swallowed. The silence is not empty. It is full of breathing, splashing, wing beats, insects, and the hidden movement of animals that do not need humans watching them to become important. Because it is an ecological station, the logic is preservation and research, not casual tourism. For the public, Thaya Ma is mostly a name, a protected patch on a map, a reminder that the Pantanal is not only something to photograph. The place seems wild because it is. It remains restricted because wildness, once converted into entertainment, rarely returns unchanged. Number 5. Atol das Rocas Biological Reserve, Rio Grande do Norte. Atol das Rocas looks like a tropical hallucination, a ring of reef and sandbanks in the Atlantic, turquoise pools, birds cutting the sky, turtles in ancient rhythm, and the feeling that a shipwrecked cartoonist designed it after too much sun. But Rocas is not a resort, it is a biological reserve. ICMBio lists the Atol das Rocas Biological Reserve as a marine coastal unit of 35,186.41 hectares, created by decree in 1979. ICMBio has also described it as located about 260 kilometers from the coast of Rio Grande do Norte, the only atoll in the South Atlantic, and one of Brazil's major marine bird and reproduction areas. Here, the word paradise becomes almost misleading. Paradise for whom? For tourists with cameras? Or for birds, crabs, turtles, sharks, corals, and scientists trying to understand an oceanic system with as little disturbance as possible? A visitor cannot simply buy a ticket and land. Rocas is a scientific world, not a leisure product. The isolation is not just distance, it is legal, logistical, ecological. The sea itself acts like a gatekeeper, and the reserve category locks the gate. Seen from above, Atol das Rocas looks delicate enough to disappear under a careless footprint. Perhaps that is the point. Some places are not closed because they are ugly, dangerous, or useless. They are closed because they are too alive. Number 4. St. Peter and St. Paul Archipelago, Equatorial Atlantic. Now Brazil begins to leave the coastline behind. The St. Peter and St. Paul Archipelago is not the tropical island fantasy. It is not palms, beaches, and hammocks. It is a scatter of dark rocks in the equatorial Atlantic, roughly 1,000 kilometers from the Brazilian coast. A small summit of a mountain chain rising from depths of about 4,000 meters. The Brazilian Navy has described the total dimension as roughly equivalent to a football field, with the highest point only about 16 meters above sea level. That is not a destination. That is a dare. The archipelago is connected to the Pro Arquipelago Scientific Program, coordinated through Brazil's maritime institutions, with Navy logistical support and scientific infrastructure. Ordinary tourism does not make sense here. The place is too small, too exposed, too violent in its waves, too strategically and scientifically specific. Imagine sleeping on a rock where the ocean has no patience, The horizon is a perfect circle. The sun hits like metal. Waves strike the stone as if trying to delete it. Seabirds own the air. Humans are temporary, careful, and highly authorized. St. Peter and St. Paul is Brazil in its most improbable form. Not a beach, not a forest, not a city, but a handful of rocks holding scientific value and maritime presence in the middle of nowhere. You probably will never get close, and if you did, the first feeling might not be wonder. It might be the very rational desire to go back. Number 3. Trindade Island and Martim Vaz Archipelago, Espírito Santo. Farther into the Atlantic, Brazil becomes almost mythical. Trindade Island sits about 140 kilometers from Vitória, Espírito Santo, and roughly 2,400 kilometers from the west coast of Africa. The Navy describes it as the only Brazilian oceanic island with permanent watercourses, and together with Martim Vaz, about 50 kilometers farther east, it forms the easternmost portion of Brazilian territory. This is not a place for weekend curiosity. Since 1957, the Brazilian Navy has maintained continuous presence at the oceanographic post of Trindade Island, a strategic occupation tied to science, sovereignty, and Brazil's maritime jurisdiction. The Navy states that this presence helps Brazil establish and explore maritime rights around the island, adding around 450,000 square kilometers to Brazilian jurisdictional waters. The landscape feels volcanic, remote, exposed. Peaks rise out of the ocean like the remains of a drowned planet. The wind does not ask politely. The sea does not behave like a tourist advertisement. Around it, marine life flourishes. Above it, Brazil's idea of territory stretches far beyond the continental map most people carry in their heads. Access is controlled and generally connected to military logistics and authorized scientific work. You do not simply decide to visit Trindade. The island is not waiting for you with a welcome sign. Trindade is what happens when a country becomes a rock in the ocean and refuses to let the ocean forget it. Beautiful, yes. Strategic, absolutely. Publicly accessible, not in the way your travel app understands. Number 2. Vale do Javari Indigenous Territory, Amazonas. This entry must be treated differently. Vale do Javari is not a forbidden attraction. It is not a mysterious destination to romanticize. It is a living indigenous territory, and the restriction here is not about denying tourists a thrill. It is about protecting human beings, cultures, health, autonomy, and survival. Located in the far west of Amazonas, Vale do Javari is one of the most sensitive regions on Earth. FUNAI states that it is Brazil's second largest indigenous land, with about 8.5 million hectares, and that it concentrates the largest population of isolated indigenous peoples in the world, with 9 confirmed references of isolated groups and 5 more under study, in addition to around 7,000 indigenous people from peoples including Matas, Matses, Maioruna, Marubo, Kanamari, Kulinapano, Karubo, and Chomdiapa. Here, isolation is not an aesthetic, it is a right. For isolated peoples, contact can mean disease, violence, cultural destruction, and irreversible harm. What an outsider calls adventure may be, for someone else, contamination. Entry into indigenous lands in Brazil requires formal procedures. FUNAI states that authorization to enter indigenous land is under the exclusive competence of FUNAI's highest authority after administrative review, and that processes must consider documents, health requirements, and the consent of the indigenous peoples involved. So the practical message is severe. Vale do Javari is not your expedition fantasy. It is not content. It is not a blank space. It is inhabited, protected, threatened, and profoundly human. Some borders exist because governments draw lines. Others exist because crossing them carelessly can damage lives. Val de Javari is the place in this countdown where curiosity must bow its head. Number 1. Ilha da Queimada Grande, São Paulo. And then there is Queimada Grande, the island that sounds like a legend even before the facts arrive. It sits off the southern coast of São Paulo, about 35 kilometers from Itanhaém, surrounded by a sea that can look beautiful enough to forgive. But the island has another name, the one that made it infamous: Snake Island. Its most famous resident is the Jararaca ilhoa, Bothrops insularis, a venomous species found only there. Butantan describes the island as not open to the general public and reports an estimated population of about 3,000 individuals, with an average density of around 55 snakes per hectare. This is why Queimada Grande is the natural climax of this list. It is small, green, and visually seductive. Exactly the sort of island people would want to mythologize, invade, film, and conquer. But its danger is not just sensational. It is biological, evolutionary, and conservationist. The Jararacas became isolated there roughly 11,000 years ago, after sea level rise separated the island from the mainland, and over time they evolved into a distinct species adapted to that isolated world. Butantan also notes that because the snake exists only on the island, it has become a target of biopiracy and is critically threatened. So the island is dangerous, yes, but it is also fragile. That is the uncomfortable twist. The place people fear is also a place that needs protection from people. Imagine stepping onto wet rock, the boat shifting behind you, the forest rising ahead, every branch suddenly suspicious. The air is hot. The ground is uneven. The silence does not comfort you. It watches you. This is not a theme park of fear. This is an ecosystem where the rules were written by isolation, venom, birds, hunger, and time. For ordinary visitors, the answer is no. Queimada Grande is for authorized research, conservation, and extreme caution, not curiosity with bad shoes and a phone camera. Sometimes, the most fascinating place in a country is exactly the one where you should not set foot, and that is the hidden Brazil. Not less beautiful because it is closed, but often closed because it is beautiful in ways tourism does not know how to respect. Beaches can be military zones. Mangroves can be nurseries. Forests can be laboratories. Islands can be biological vaults. Indigenous territories can be living worlds whose greatest protection is distance. The desire to enter forbidden places is old. It comes from curiosity, vanity, hunger for images, and the childish belief that the world becomes more real when we personally stand on it. But some places are more real precisely because we do not. Brazil still holds territories outside the logic of tourism, places where the best way to preserve the mystery is to accept that not everything needs to be visited.